Hey guys, so this is my 1994 Impala SS. It's been 6-speed swapped with a T56 out of a Camaro. It's using the FTB brackets to mount the Camaro pedals. You can kind of see them there. And then for the shifter, I'm running a tick short shifter. This one's offset to the left, but now they sell a more universal one which centers it, and I would suggest getting that one because at the time I bought this, that wasn't available, so that's why mine is offset to the left. So in terms of the T56 that you want, since you're running an LT1, you want the LT1 T56. That is a pull style hydraulic system, which you can tell by this clutch fork right here. So the LS variants have a throwout bearing, and to run those LS variants you would need to do a conversion, and there's a little bit of extra added cost. That being said, if you can't get an LT1 T56 for cheap, just go with the Magnum. The main issue is these transmissions are getting 20 years old now, so if you get a junkyard transmission, there's a good chance that it needs to be gone through, and you're gonna end up spending similar money when you could have just bought a Magnum F that comes on warranty and is rated to 700 horsepower. So I would suggest that, or if you're gonna find an LT1 T56, you gotta get it for cheap, or you gotta be able to do the work yourself to refresh it. So, and here is how the pedals would look like. So I guess in terms of, let's say for example you did find an LT1 T56 that you want to test out, the main thing you want to first look at is the input shaft right here. So that's going to give you a good indicator of whether the transmission is going to be trash or not. So this one's pretty decent, but I'll give you an example of a pretty bad one. So right here, you can kind of see how it's leveled out differently, even though it should pretty much be exactly the same thickness as this bottom part all the way to the top, but it's like chewed up. So this is kind of what I went through, and this is a pretty good sign that the transmission is trash, and this would need to be replaced. If anything though, what you can do is, if you have the transmission out, don't be afraid to pull the tail shaft housing off. It's a few bolts only, and this way you can actually service the reverse synchro, because those go out pretty frequently on these older T56s, and it's really not hard to do. Just take the tail shaft housing off, and then you're gonna be able to just pull a few gears, and you're gonna pull a few snap rings and a few gears, and you'd be able to access reverse and pretty much service that yourself. There's a few good YouTube videos on how to do that, so I would suggest doing that before you even install it in your car. And then the other tip that I can give is replace, this is the reverse lockout solenoid. You can kind of see how massive it is. So the issue is when you're swapping it into your B-body, you're gonna need to hammer out the tunnel quite a bit to get this to fit, but what you can do is you can buy a mechanical reverse lockout from RDE. Just search it up on Google, and it's probably just this thick, like the thickness of my thumb right here. So it makes it a lot easier to get into the car without having to hammer out the tunnel. In terms of the pedals, you can kind of see all those holes for the pedal connectors. That's really all the electronics that you're gonna need, like the wiring and electronics related things you're gonna need for the T56. For this, all you really need to do is just cut this bracket off, and then this another portion on this side to get that to fit. So that's pretty much it in terms of that. So I guess to test out the LT1, if you want to know if it's good or bad, what you can just do is this input shaft, just pull in and out on it. If it moves, that means you have too much end play, and these things should be set to a preload, so there should be no in and out movement when you do that. If there is, then it needs to be reshimmed for sure. And then what you can do is just rotate it. If it rotates nice and smoothly in neutral, then that's a pretty good sign. If it's tight, that means there's too much preload. There's too much shims pretty much, and you would pretty much want to reshim it, or you can wear out the components quicker. Outside of that, I would just roll through the gears, keep spinning it. In 5th and 6th, it will get harder to move, so that's normal. I mean, that's what I went through on my other transmission. So yeah, I guess that's it in terms of the T56. So there's a few other things I didn't talk about yet. The cross member, you're going to want to get a T56 cross member from Clear Image. You can get it from 3 pedals, but I think they are more expensive, so definitely Clear Image has a good cross member, which is under my car right now. And there is one component, the bell housing. So one thing about the bell housing is these older ones might have stripped bolt holes, and what might end up happening is when you're going to install it in the car, you'll realize that the bolt is just kind of spinning without getting tight. So just be careful of that. You might have to pretty much create new inserts for this. I think helicoil is the correct term for it. And then right now, like for my transmission, there's multiple like washers just to get the bolt torqued properly. Not like each bolt didn't fit exactly perfectly, and it took a while to get it figured out, so just beware of that. And then I guess one thing is, if you don't have, so this is going to be the difference between OBD1 and OBD2 cars. I can't really speak much to the OBD2 cars, but for the OBD1 cars, you're not going to have an RPM gauge. So one way to do it is to do the Z28 cluster mod for the Camaro. Gosh, there's not much lighting, so it's hard to see. Sorry. So you can kind of see it there. Maybe I can just turn on the light. Yeah, there we go. So that's a good mod you can do if you want to keep it OEM looking. There is a guide on the Facebook group by Jim, I forgot his last name, but he has a really good guide on pretty much taking this buying a Z28 cluster, taking it apart, setting the mileage, then kind of putting back in. You will need to get a custom wiring harness that sometimes comes up for sale. You can create it by yourself, but you would need the components, and to find the components for it isn't that easy. So yeah, I would suggest, if you don't have the wiring skills, just see if you can go buy the harness, and then you'll pretty much have to run one wire into the engine bay, all the way to the PCM to get the RPM signal. And then you can also get this oil temperature reading correct with the oil pressure reading correct with the sender unit. I don't know the exact details of that, but that's something that I will do in the future. So yeah, that's a good way to do it. I mean, otherwise you could just get like a external tack and just mount it somewhere on the dashboard or the pillar. I guess one other thing I didn't talk about is the year of the transmission you want. So the LT1 T56 you want between 94 to 97, if I recall, because the 93 has a different gear ratio. It's supposedly rated to less horsepower that it can handle, so I would suggest just getting a 94 to 97. So your gearing in the rear end will also kind of determine what you want. So for example, it also depends on the rear tire size. So if you have a smaller tire size, just kind of like factor in your gear and your transmission ratios. So if you go to the Tremec gear ratio calculator website, you can kind of calculate your specified RPM and whatnot. So right now mine is a 255/50 setup with the 410 gears. So, but if you compare that to I think a 275/40 with 373s, it's actually very similar. Even though mine's a 410, because I have a taller tire, it actually goes lower that way. So it's just something to consider when you're kind of selecting your rear end.